So, someone's a billionaire or they're a millionaire. Are they stingy? Are they exploiting people? Are they hurtful? Are they using people? Okay. So I was watching this episode of some show and they were saying or asking the question, are billionaires or millionaires, are they uh, people who exploit others, who take advantage of slave labor? And it's not a yes or a no. It's nuanced, like everything else in life. It's layered, it's spectrum, it's maybe sometimes depends on the context. So there are billionaire companies, billionaire people who absolutely utilize slave labor, exploitation. They hold people down. They're stingy, no doubt. But I know you don't want to hear this, but there are a lot of billionaires who are good people, and you should get to know some because kind of like don't talk shit if you haven't been in someone's shoes. Do you know someone who has done X, Y, and Z? If you haven't, then how could you really make that? Now countries or governments or multi-world, the conglomerate, big companies. Yeah, sure, we can make observations because the books are open, right? But I mean, what if you are somebody who you came up with a great idea for an app and it took off, and or an online company of some sort, like doing software, and now what? You're a billionaire. I mean, you weren't trying to be a billionaire. It just happened. You know what I mean? That happens all the time. Are they bad people? Maybe they are bad people, but I know people who make 75,000 a year who are pieces of shit. So what? Who exploit, who use slave labor, and they're not my friends, but I know who they are. I know of them. Not good people. So it's the old adage, if you're rich, are you bad? If you're poor, are you good? Life doesn't work like that. So you also can make the argument that, a lot of billionaires or billionaire people who own companies have made a lot of wealth for a lot of people too. And, so it's nuanced. It's not so easily just, well, you have money, you're bad. You don't have money, you're good. I mean, again, and I own multiple businesses, and I have customers who are multimillionaires and billionaires. And I don't know. I mean, last time I checked, poor people aren't putting food on my table. It's the rich that put food on my table. So, and I'm not saying they're good people for doing it, but some billionaires are good people for doing it, and some millionaires are good people for doing it, and some are bad, just like some poor people are bad. So, just because you're poor doesn't mean you're a good person. And I'm not saying you deserve slave labor, but I'm just saying that it depends, and it depends on what type of business and how you decide to run that business. I agree. Look, I mean, if you can get your products made in a country where it's safe and fair trade and fair labor, and you decide not to, and you decide to go to China for slave labor, that's fucked up. Shame on you. But there's a lot of companies that do say, hey, you know what? We're going to pay our people a living wage. We're going to not contract out stuff to slave labor. We're going to keep things in house, and in a country that pays, well and takes care of their people, or a company that does, and those places exist. That's not for me to tell you who they are. You go do your own research. But I think it's like anything else in life, to paint with a broad brush. That's just so disingenuous and so childish. And so, again, go meet someone. Do you know someone who's poor, and do you know someone who's rich? Doesn't have to be a billionaire. You can maybe know someone who's a millionaire and talk to them and get a chance to say, like, they're not a piece of shit. They're not trying to exploit people and things like that. So I think it depends, And again, I can make the argument. You watching this, you making 40,000 a year, or you making 80,000 a year. Shame on you. You buy your T-shirts from that company that that they're using slave labor. Why don't you buy a higher end T-shirt that's made in a different country or something, in a country that they have fair work environment and fair pay. So, it's easy to point the finger and say, oh, the billionaire, this, and the millionaire that. But look at you. I mean, you don't have to buy those shoes from that store that uses slave labor. You could spend a little bit more money and buy a better shoe that's made in America, or made at a company that pays their employees well and doesn't use slave labor tactics. You could do that if you wanted to research it and do it, but you don't. Shame on you. No, I'm not going to, I could easily say that, right? So, again, look in the mirror, and it's easy to point fingers at the billionaire and the millionaire, but there's good and bad in all, to be quite honest. But just because someone is a billionaire or a millionaire or 100,000, it doesn't mean that they're stingy and mean and bad and using slave labor. You really got to do your homework. And to those who are, yeah, that's fucked up, you know. And we all know the companies who are, you know. And it is fucked up to hide behind all the shareholders. Stop, you know, you're hiding, and that's immoral, you know, to utilize slave labor like that for sure, you know. And people say, oh, the prices will go up. Stop, like, you know, come on, that's an excuse. Okay, so it goes up. So, but then people have better jobs, they have the money to buy the shit. So, you know, the rising tide lifts all boats, and there's just no reason for slave labor. But again, just because someone's a millionaire or a billionaire doesn't mean that, you know, they're doing nefarious shit. Because again, there's a lot of people doing nefarious shit who make 75,000 a year, you know, and own some mom and pop shop. So, yeah. Anyways, what do you think? Comments below. Later.